for one more second? I've got a couple preliminary things, and one of them is something else that we do. If we can just have a short moment of silence for those individuals that have passed in the last year. And I just want to add one name. It's absolutely shocking to me yesterday to have discovered that a young man in town by the name of Bill Booth passed away yesterday, unexpectedly. And he's been around a while. He's got a family in this town, and I'd like to have you folks keep him in mind as well. Okay, thank you. A couple of preliminary things just to get the rules of the road down. In order to vote, in order to communicate with the body in this room, you got to have one of these babies right here, okay? And when you do step up to the mic, this is a recorded session. We'll need you to state your name, and if you can state your address, that would be appreciated as well. It is all recorded. We want to make sure we get a good recording and an accurate recording of what takes place. At the end of this particular session, we're going to take a 1/2 hour break. There'll be a break between this session and the school deliberative session. So we're going to move things one right after the other, and we'll move them as quickly and efficiently as possible, but we have to reset everything in front, which means, by the way, that you have to hand these pink cards in. You've got one, you got to hand it in before you leave. And if you're sticking around for the deliberative session for the school, you'll be issued different cards for the voting and for the purpose of addressing the body. And that would be greatly appreciated. I know in a lot of ways this is maybe in a way a more efficient way of doing these things, running one right after the other. But I do appreciate those folks that for scheduling purpose had to change some things because of that snow event that we had this week. One other thing I want to do before we get down to the guts of the warrants and the meeting is I just want to make sure that everybody understands how the Budget Committee came to their recommendations. I've been asked by Mr. Forst if he could address the body before we got going. This is in an effort to be a little bit more efficient and effective during the course of this meeting. We can move it on a little bit better if you have an understanding of how the Budget Committee came to the conclusion. So I want to surrender the mic for a moment to Mr. Forst. He'll give you an idea of how they work things out.
Good morning, everyone. I asked Mark for this liberty this morning just to help everybody understand. You have a proposed budget in front of you. That budget shows Selectmen's recommendation and Budget Committee's recommendation. And as you see them today, they are both the same. That is because that after the Budget Committee did their work, the Selectmen went back and looked at this and felt that our recommendations were valid, that we had talked with department heads had agreed with us where we chose to make cuts or to suggest, an alternative method of funding. And they agreed with these recommendations, so they look the same to you today. So I wanted to just get some numbers out there so you all understood the work that we had done. We started with the Selectmen's recommended budget of $3,812,555. From that, the Budget Committee cut $55,700 to come to the point where we recommend a budget of $3,756,855. That budget is up $136,165 from the previous year's budget, or about 3.75%. I have a list of the areas which we cut the money. If anybody would like to ask questions in those areas, we cut money from the fire, police, transfer, the executive, financial, legal, the planning board, the highway administration, general assistance, and library budgets in differing amounts. At any point during the meeting, if you would like to hear the reasoning and the numbers that we cut, I would be more than happy to answer those questions. Thank you.
And one other little reminder. I know you folks have been here before, but if you're making motions and if you're seconding the motions, it would be greatly appreciated if you state your name. That has to be recorded as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to start this off. This is a deliberative session. You understand this is a SB2 type proceeding. We're not going to come to final votes on anything here. This is basically an informative type of a gathering. We do encourage input if there are questions, but this is to basically lay before the town, the voting body, just what the warrant articles are. And we will take certain motions on certain language and so forth during the course of this particular meeting. You have to understand that we're constricted. We do have legal counsel here today, but just not me, thank God, who can answer some questions with regard to the structure of these warrant articles if need be. Just to lay out a few things, there is going to be obviously a second session. It's March 13th. That will be your voting session. There is going to be an election of town officers at that time. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who those individuals were, folks in the running. Budget committee is Ann Kirby. There is one vacancy on that particular committee, so there will be a write-in candidate or more to fill that vacancy, and that is encouraged. Cemetery trustees Candace Daigle. Library trustees Elizabeth Clark. Library trustee for 3 years is Donna White. Moderator is myself, Mark Sisti. Road agent, Paul Perkins. Selectmen, we've got a contested election for selectmen. We've got Gary R. Anderson, Michael J. Jean, James Dan Shallow, Michael J. Wilson. Supervisor of the checklist, Patricia A. Blusey. Supervisor of the checklist, Michelle Dakota, Latina Provincial. Town Treasurer, Robert C. Carpenter, Glenn Waring. Trustee of the Trust Funds, Frederick Buckles and Neil Roberts. That'll be the slate of individuals up for election and the positions that they're vying for. I'd like to move right to Article 2. It's entitled Amend Zoning Ordinance Personal Wireless Communication Facilities. And I'll read it into the record. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 1 as proposed by the Gilmanton Planning Board for the town's zoning ordinance as follows? To amend Article 3 of the zoning ordinance, personal wireless communications facilities, Section K as follows. Amend purpose and goals, applicability, district regulations, including removing Class 1 and 2 facilities and sensitivity zones, including overlay district map, use regulations, performance standards, site plan review procedures, abandonment, including removing all bonding requirements, appeals and definitions in order to be in compliance with state law and streamline oversight of communication facilities. You'll be asked at the March 13th meeting for a yes or no vote on that. Is there anybody in the body now that needs any explanation or needs to comment on Article 2? Yes, lights and light. I think I should turn it on. Should be on the sides and on-off switch. There you go.
How's that?
Good.
Dick DeSay, 80 Lakeshore Drive. I'd just like an explanation as to exactly what this does.
Me too.
Good.
Anybody help us out here? This is not good. Anybody from planning around here? Wow. That's very interesting. I don't think we can help you there. Hold on.
As a member of the...
State your name, please.
Sorry, my name is Daniel Abbott. I live in the Ironworks. I'd like to pull this up, but I can't. It's not all right, let's give it a shot. So I'm just going to try and be helpful here because I'm not going to speak for the planning board. My name is Nate Abbott. I'm on the DDA, and we did review this warrant article. there were some aspects of our zoning as it pertains to wireless communication facilities, namely cell towers, that were not completely in compliance with state law. And there were provisions for bonding and for other aspects that did not conform with changes that had been made in state law since we implemented our zoning. So these have been amended to streamline it, which should make it more simple for applications. It removes some provisions that were there for bonding of facilities. I asked that question of the planning administrator, and his response was that there was a liability aspect and that the state provisions did not allow us to do that in the way that we had done it before, so we removed them. That's the best that I can do. This is unofficial. I'm just trying to help you understand. Is that helpful, Dick? Yeah, sorry about that. It is a little elaborate, but it did come from the planning administrator, and their explanation was that it was to help us conform with state law and make it a little easier for the application process to go through. I would suggest that before you vote on this on next Tuesday, if you have a concern, in March 13th, that you go and research this matter, because it is a lengthy thing. It's not really addressable by me or anybody else in this discussion. Okay?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Anything else on Article 2? All right, Article 2 is going to be will be placed before you on the 13th as it is written. Article 3 is a petition to amend historic district map to remove. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 2 as proposed by petition of the voters of this town to amend the Town of Gilmanton Historic District Ordinance as follows? Amend the official district map of the Town of Gilmanton by removing land known as tax map lot 0004150-049000-000000, located at 11 Page Road, and tax map lot 0041505050000, and then a whole mess of zeros after that, located at 27 Page Road, from being designated as being part of the Gilmanton Historic District. Said parcels are located near the intersection of Page Road and New Hampshire Route 140. That is the language of Article 3. Any discussion on that particular? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to Article 4. Article 3 will be on your petition. Sorry. I didn't see your hand, sir. Can you just move up? I can't hear.
George Roberts, I live on 544 Meeting House Road. If you don't mind, folks, please, the audience. This article here is asking you to remove 2 parcels of land on Smith Meeting House Road. One's on 140 and Page Road intersection, and the other one is further up on what's called Page Road. This article allows, if it is adopted, the property owners to take down a cape which was probably built before 1810. It was originally in the Page homestead, a lot of history behind that. It is in disrepair, but I don't know, because I can't find the minutes of the meeting of the planning board, what the reasoning was the landowners made for the petition, except that the property is what someone would express as depressed or needs repair. This is a double chimney cape. I'm not sure there were any options offered at the planning board. I'm not sure what the total intent of the landowners is, except to get it out of the district. That, without talking about whatever the motives might be, allows the landowners to tear down this cape, which is 1810 here. And as I say, it has a lot of history, and is one of the founding families, Town of Gilmanton, Page Hill, belonged to a Dixie Page, and was the brother of a gentleman that owned my house at one time. So what you're being asked to do is take it out of the district, and then the landowners can do as they please. And as I say, not having the minutes of the meeting, if there are any, I'd like to read them. That allows the landowner, from there on in, to tear the building down. Now, a long time ago, and I'll wrap up as quick as I can,
Thank you.
but this is important, I think, to go with it. I think we're proud of our heritage. The structures are part of our heritage. And a long time ago, everybody who was a landowner put their land in a historic district on purpose. They said they would put it in the district knowing there would be restrictions, knowing there would be a public hearing before a historic district commission of any time they want to change anything that's significant architectural change. Now, there's never been a petition to do that before the historic district commission that I know of. And I follow that closely in the planning board meeting. But if you vote to do this, then they can tear it down. And then goes a piece of architecture, as primitive as some people may think it is, that's gone forever. There are no alternatives. You take it off the map, the landowners can do as they want. I don't know who is going to become the landowner, who will succeed, the ownership, what the motives would be, not impugning anybody that the owner at the present time is in a trust, but there's no understanding if it's going to be torn down or burnt down. So there are two parcels of land. And I would think the town of Gillington would give themselves the option. If there's an opportunity to divide one piece of land for a person to build a new home, that piece of land could be separated, I think, without objection from people in the historic district. But to give the trust the option to tear down or burn down this property, I think, would be a major loss of what's important to the town of Gillington. Some people don't think much about that until you drive through certain sections and understand that the landowners put money back into their property to keep it. So it's for you to look at for the beauty of the area and for something for Gillington to be proud of. Unfortunately, there's no control of abandonment that goes on in some properties. But I don't think all the possibilities were looked at from the landowner's point of view before the Historic District Commission or anybody else for that matter as to what the other options would be other than taking the property out of the district and having it destroyed. And I ask you to think twice about that. There's an individual involved that we all love who owns the trust, but that aside, whatever their motive might be, the jeopardy involved is to destroy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, concerns? Okay, that particular article, the petition that was just discussed, will be on the ballot on March 13th as set forth. Article 4, petition, biosolids. Are you in favor of the adoption of Amendment 3 as proposed by petition of the voters of this town? 4, town zoning ordinance as follows. To amend Article 3, general provisions applicable to all districts by adding a new section, biosolids, to protect health and welfare of residents and prevent pollution of surface and groundwater resources, stockpiling or land spreading of municipal sewage, sludge, biosolids Class A and Class B as defined by New Hampshire statutes and regulations. It's not allowed in the town of Gillington. To amend Article 4, Table 1 by adding biosolids, sludge, not permitted in all districts. Any discussion on that particular article? Seeing no hands, that particular article will be on the ballot as set forth. Article 5, operating budget. Shall the town of Gilmanton raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget posted within the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purpose set forth therein, totaling $756,855. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $3,710,721, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law. Or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, 10 and 16, to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. And do we have any comments or concerns with regard to Article 5?
I make the motion, we move $3,756,855 for Article 5.
And that would be by Forrest. Second.
I'll make a motion to second that.
Any discussion with regard to Article 5? Seeing no hands raised, I'm moving on to Article 6. Self-contained breathing apparatus capital reserve. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $11,723 to be deposited in the self-contained breathing apparatus capital reserve fund established in 2011. Do I hear any motion on that?
I move $11,723 for Article 6.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded. Any discussion on Article 6? Seeing no hands, that's the way Article 6 will be placed on your ballot on March 13th. Article 7. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $126,178 for the purpose of self-contained breathing apparatus, and to further fund this appropriation by withdrawing $126,178 from the self-contained breathing apparatus capital reserve fund established in 2011. Is there a motion on Article 7?
I move $126,178 for Article 7.
Is there
I'll
a
second
second?
that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on 7? I'll be moving on to 8. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $65,000 for the purchase of 2 replacement cardiac monitors. These monitors will be located in each ambulance. Any discussion on Article 8?
Move $65,000 for Article 8.
Do I have a
I'll second Article 8.
Thank you. Comments or concerns? I'll be moving to Article 9. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $43,500 to purchase and equip a new police cruiser. Is there a motion on Article 9?
Move $43,500 for Article 9.
Is there
I'll
a second?
second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion on Article 9. Seeing no interest in the discussion, I'm moving on to Article 10. Purchase and transfer station skid steer. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $47,000 to purchase a new skid steer for the transfer and recycling facility, and authorize the withdrawal of $30,000 from the recycling equipment capital reserve fund established in 2006. The balance of $17,000 is to come from general taxation. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make the motion to move $47,000 for Article 10.
And a second.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 10? Yes.
Dick Desai, 80 Lakeshore Drive. As with a lot of these motions, it would be helpful to have an explanation as to exactly what the skid steer is and what the purpose.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. If people need clarification, the questions can be asked. And if somebody would explain that, that would be appreciated.
We're just replacing the old skid steer that's at the transfer station in the front lobby.
Anybody need any further explanation as to what?
The mic's not working.
Well, let's turn the thing on. Come on up here.
We're replacing the skid steer that they use at the transfer station for loading the bales of aluminum, steel, move stuff around at the station?
What's that? Anything else? Yeah, come on.
I'm Gary Anderson from Middle Route, 174 Middle Route. Just curious what you guys are doing with the old skid steer. Are you selling it?
I'm not sure what we're gonna do with it yet. We might trade it in or something like that. So we have to start there.
We gotta speak this thing up. Let's use a different mic. That one's not working.
Mark, this one's working.
Did everybody hear that? We're not sure what we're doing with the old one yet. So it depends when we do the transfer and everything. If we can get money for it, we'll trade it. If the highway department can use it, we might have them take it over. Not sure yet. We have to decide today.
Okay? Anything else? Come on.
Debbie Smithers, Route 140. How old is the skid steer that we currently have?
It's about 16 years old.
Yes.
Yep, speak up.
Liz Brunel, Heritage Lane. The statement you just made was, we're not sure what we're going to do with it. We may give it to the highway department. Well, if the highway department can use it, then why can't the transfer station continue to use it?
Because it's just for a spare. The thing is pretty big. If they can put it someplace in a pit or something like that, or utilize it as not a reliable piece of equipment, they're gonna have it down. It's like we did with the old command vehicle last year from the fire department. Yeah, the old dump truck too.
Then I would, just as a town member, not use it as a backup anywhere, because it's just going to cost us money to fix it if it's not reliable, correct?
Not sure. I mean, they need a new one at the transfer station. That's why we approved it. So if they can, I mean, this is preliminary questions anyway, because we're not sure that we're going to trade the thing in. We're not sure with anything, but if it can be utilized, you're not going to get the money for what it's worth by just trading it in. If it could be utilized some other place, then that would be, I think, a reasonable and smart thing to do.
But if it can be utilized some other place, why can't it be utilized as transfer station?
Because
And if it's
it's old.
unreliable, then I would recommend that we get rid of it, so that we're not spending the money to repair it for something that you're stating is unreliable.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thanks. Any other comments? Okay, that's the skid steer. Article 10, that'll be on your ballot. That's set forth. Article 11, Stage Road Bridges Final Design and Bidding. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $104,453 for final design and bidding for the replacement of Stage Road Bridge over Nighthawk Hollow Brook and Stage Road Bridge over unnamed brook, Doobie Hill Road, and authorize the withdrawal of $104,453 from the Bridge Capital Reserve Fund established in 1995. The town will be reimbursed 80%, that's $83,562 of the actual engineering costs by the New Hampshire DOT State Aid Bridge Program. This is a non-lapsing appropriation for RSA 32:76 and shall not lapse until December 31, 2021, or when the project is complete, whichever is sooner. Is there a motion on Article 11?
I'd like to make the motion to move $104,453 for Article 11.
And a second.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Is there discussion on Article 11? Okay. No discussion. That'll appear on the ballot March 13th as set forth. Article 12, Crystal Lake Bridge. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $85,000 for the preliminary design and environmental permit for the replacement of Crystal Lake Road Bridge over Nelson Brook. The town will be reimbursed 80%, that's up to $68,000 of the actual engineering cost by the New Hampshire DOT State Aid Bridge Program. This is a non-lapsing appropriation for RSA 32:76. It shall not lapse until December 31, 2021, or when the project is complete, whichever is sooner. Is there a motion on Article 12?
I make the motion, we move $85,000 on Article 12.
Second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 12? And Article 12 will appear as set forth on your ballot on March 13th. Article 13, Police Detail Revolving Fund, add percentage to make legal. Are you in favor of lowering the percentage of funds deposited in the Police Details Revolving Fund from police detail billings from 100% of those billings to 70% of those billings? If approved, the balance will go into the general fund. Is there a motion on Article 13? I don't know if there needs to be a motion on Article 13. I guess it's a discussion. I'm going to defer to legal counsel. I love doing it.
I don't understand.
Article 13, I don't think there has to be a formal motion or a second. There's no action figure. No valid figures.
Okay, so you're going to bring it to the floor for discussion without a motion?
Correct. That's fine. Yes.
Malcolm McLeod, Orange Ave. I do have a question. What would the other 30%, or what would the police details revolving fund ordinarily be used for?
Anybody got an answer on that?
Right now, the way the fund is set up, 100% of it's for paying police officers. In the cruises and stuff, the town does not, does right now charge for the cruises, but we can't take the funds and put it back into the general fund to pay the expenses of the cruises. So this just makes it legal so that the town can take the 30% and use it for offsetting the cruises and the gas and all that.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yeah, come on.
Don Guarino, Meeting House Road. I always wanted to do this like Stephen Tyler. Hey, I had an interest in this Warren article. We brought this forward to the voters a few years ago. What happened prior to this article was the police department had to charge the taxpayers in the general budget for the details, and then actually the monies came back to the town through the billings. So it always became a discussion when we went to the meetings, like, why are we putting $70,000 additional dollars into the police department? And always got bogged down. So we found that there was a means of taking the funds or the revenues from, let's say, a tree operation on 140, where the police were providing a detail, and actually having a revolving account so that the funds that were received from billings would go into this account and then pay for the details. So we weren't, the taxpayer wasn't actually having to be taxed for this. When I saw that it had come up in discussion, I couldn't actually see anything wrong with this Warren article, the one that was brought forward to the voters 2 years ago. And so in conversations with the Department of Revenue Administration, I found, just like the select board found out, is that 100% of the funds were from billing were going into the revolving account, but the last sentence that we voted on wasn't quite right. So we had voted as a body to take the 100% of the revenue, put it in the account, but we had no means of putting the excess amount into the general fund. So the opportunity was here to make a correction, which the selectmen looked at it, and all the revenue is split at the beginning. It's not split at the end. So if someone's here saying, well, there's 22,000 sitting in this account right now, it quite possibly can have that amount, but all the 100% of the funds at the moment are going into this account. If we make a change to this account, the way that the Board of Selectmen are considering, and something changes on the police side, for instance, something as simple as gasoline going to $5 a gallon, it's quite possible that this revolving fund will be underfunded, with 30% going to the selectmen and 70% going back to the department to pay for the details. I think it just takes a simple thing like that, and I don't think it's worthwhile to change that in that direction. I think it would be much better. At one time I thought it should say, you know, something to the effect like 90% goes to cover the details, 10% can go back into the general fund for the selectmen to use as they wish. And then I thought, well, that may be too extreme. So I've had conversations with the chief, and it would be better if it was like an 80-20 split. And at the most, I actually think that we should keep it so that it funds itself and provides the money for the details. And then it'd be awesome if we have excess money at the beginning that actually can go back to operating the town of Gilmanton in the general fund. So at the moment, the way that the original article is set up, it's the funds get hung up at the end. They can't be dispersed. So I understand that we'd like to get the monies, and I think that I'd like to offer an amendment that changes the calculation.
I can't. You can do it, but you have to make a motion. Okay? All right, very good. All right, so
I make a motion to move the numbers, the split from what it says right now, which I think is 75-25. I'd like to make a motion
actually,
to...
let's be clear, okay? Let's be clear instead of guessing, okay? Take a look at the article before you make the motion, so you know for sure what you're doing.
I move to change the line in here where it says detail billings from 100% of the billings to 70%. I'd like to make a motion to move the number from 100% to 80% of the billings, and then 20% of the billings will go back into the general fund. Does that, everybody?
Let's hear if there's a second.
I'll second.
What is it? Name?
Malcolm McLeod.
All right. Now, there's been a motion made in a second, and we'll have a little discussion on that now. It's, the language now is, from what I understand, the bottom line is like an 80-20 split, correct? All right. Feel free to discuss this guy.
Liz Gilroy, Garbage Lane. What was your reasoning behind making it from 100 to 70%?
Because we wanted the money to go back to offset taxes. We didn't want it to sit there. Yes.
How much
That's
money is sitting there currently?
20-ish,
What?
20,000.
And at whose discretion does it get used for what by the selectmen?
You don't have the discretion right now. That's why this article is here. So DRA wanted this wording and needed either a dollar figure or a percentage figure to figure out what we could do. Because right now we can't touch that money. And I don't feel as though it's fair to the taxpayer to have money sitting there and not be able to go back and offset.
And that money is currently, I'm just clarifying, is currently being used by the police department at their discretion for details?
No.
Can we ask that question, moderator?
Sure, go on, ask the question.
Can we have, Chief, could you tell us what the funds are currently being used for?
That excess money, that 20-some thousand, well,
You got to speak up there now. Nobody's hearing you.
Chief Burke.
So when we work in detail, we bill out for more than it actually costs. So that excess money is sitting in this revolving fund right now. So that's where the 22,000 or whatever is in there right now. So it's my understanding from DRA that with the previous warrant article, we can't spend that money, we can't access that money without either a warrant article to pull it out or to do a percentage such as this. My understanding, and presented this to them, is 70 is not currently enough to pay for what we need to pay for. 75, 25, but it's not being present it that way.
Okay. Any other comment? Lyle?
Mike Wilson, Route 140. The extra funds, can that be used towards the police department buying cruisers and other items like that? Who makes the billing amount for the officers going on in details? Like Mr. Reno was saying, can we offset the cost if we do a fuel raise by raising that amount of money to offset the cost to us?
Anybody got an answer? You got an answer? I want to make sure you're using the microphone that works.
Okay, so the first question was, can it be used for buying a cruiser? The language of the existing article that has some incorrect language at the end for DRA does not authorize the use of the funds for anything additional. So it's likely the DRA would tell us that we would need to make an amendment to our existing warrant article in order to be able to use the funds to purchase. And there are specific parameters of what you can use the funds for, but you do need that language in a warrant article. So at this point, it's my understanding that there's nothing other than the police detail that it can be used for. And I'm sorry, can you remind me what the second question was?
Yeah, back up for a second. The money that we are getting from that, is that to go to the police department or to the general fund, to spend however?
Right now, it's 100% into the police revolving fund, so it's a separate accounting mechanism. So everything that's paid out of it at this point is the hard costs of the detail.
Stay the same?
That would stay the same in this instance. It's just that then we wouldn't have the surplus sitting there that we unfortunately are unable to use in any of the fashions at this point. The second question was the billing.
Yes.
That the detail rate is set. The selectmen do have the authority to set that rate. They did recently in the last year or two, the last year, working with the chief. They did make a rate change, and they do have the ability to do that again. Yes.
Would that rate change again if we did have cost increase at fuel or anything else, so that was not costing taxpayers?
They would have to make that change themselves. It wouldn't change automatically. But right now, the hard costs that are being paid for out of that do not include the cruiser, the gas, things of that nature. It's really the employee fees.
Thank you. Further comments? Board?
Brian Forrest, 1503 Providence Road. I'm out at this microphone as a taxpayer. I have a few questions, and I think some of them were answered during our session, but I'd like them answered for the body here right now. The 70-30 split is something that can be relooked at a year from now if this scenario doesn't work correctly, right?
Absolutely do another warrant article, yes.
Right now, we have $23,000 in change sitting in limbo that we cannot touch, correct?
Correct.
If we do not fix this problem, that money continues to sit there, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the 70-30 is a best guess. It's not perfect. 75-25, it's not perfect. But this warrant article needs to pass, otherwise taxpayer money sits someplace doing nothing for us right now. I wanted to take this money, spend it on our new cruiser. We can't touch the money. So let's not get hung up about 70-30, 75-25, 80-20, 90-10. Let's move this warrant article, let's pass it, let's figure out if 70-30 works. If it doesn't, next year we come back here, we change it to 80-20, we change it to whatever we need to change it to make it work. But we need the warrant article to expend the excess money to offset taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Further? Wait a minute, first time for...
Amy Brown, Sawyer Lake. So I just have a question to try and understand the numbers. So, and I want to make sure I heard your explanation correctly and the chief's explanation correctly. So if we move forward with this and make the change, is the intent to then, I know right now we can't touch that money, so that's an issue in itself, but is the intent to move this through, that if that money is now able to be touched, the intent is not to put it back towards the police department, it's meant to put towards other things for the town?
It would go into the general fund, which is,
It could be for anything. So right now, technically, that
it wouldn't be
excess,
assigned to anything specific.
so it's just there to use for whatever we need it for, but not specifically to go back towards the police department.
Your general fund would basically offset your taxes.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure I heard that correctly, because right now, the intent was to be able to recycle that for the police department, but the way it's written, nobody can touch it.
The original intention, my understanding of the original article, was that only the funds needed to pay the detail would go into, would be used for the detail, and that anything beyond those costs would go into the general fund. That's the way the language read, the surplus would go into the general fund. We've been told by the Department of Revenue that that language is not legal, and therefore we cannot move the monies as originally intended.
Okay, thank you.
That was the
Thank you.
intent of that warrant article.
If you're going to comment, we're going to use a microphone that works. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
I agree with Mr. Forrest that we should move this so that the money doesn't get hung up. I just think that it would be a shame to move it where the chief said that the split is too tight. We can revisit this and make it tighter the following year if we wanted to, but why would we actually place ourselves in a position where our police department was, I'll just make a number up, looking for $10,000 because they never made an adjustment on the detail rate that they were charging, the town was charging, and then he had to find the $10,000 within his own budget. It just seems, let's just try it. I want you to support the 80-20 split. Thanks, bye.
Anything else? Okay, right now, we've got an amendment, we've got a motion, we've got a motion to amend. Basics of the amendment are to substitute the numbers in there now at an 80-20 split. That's my understanding of what Mr. Guarino moved for and what the second was, correct? So right now, we're going to take a vote. I'm going to call a vote. It's on Article 13 on the amendment. Remember, this is on the amendment. Are you in favor of lowering the percentage of funds deposited in the police details revolving fund from police detail billings of 100% of those billings to 80% of those billings? If approved, the balance will go into the general fund. I'll try it with voice vote first. If it's too close, I'm going to start asking for counsel. So, all in favor of the amended language, please indicate by stating aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Too close for me. I'm going to do a card count. You ready to go in a card count? All set there? Set. All in favor of Mr. Guarino's amendment, and the numbers, the critical numbers are now 80% rather than 70%. Please indicate by raising your card now. Keep up until we get a count. And all those opposed, you put those out. All those opposed, please raise those. So if you can count those up. We've got I'll be corrected, I think it's 43-22 in favor of the amended language. That doesn't resolve the article yet, though. Any discussion on the amended language before we go forward on that? Yeah, come on up.
Can an amendment be made to,
You can do anything you want. This is your meeting.
to use that money specifically to offset the cost of the cruiser?
I have no idea. I don't think so.
No.
I think it goes into the general fund. Anything else? No discussion on the amended language. Article 13 now reads 80% instead of 70%. There's no further discussion. You'll be faced with the duty of voting it up or down on March 13th with the new number. The new number is 80%. Got it?
So it didn't go.
If there's any question? Okay, so as the article is amended, all those in favor, please indicate by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Ayes have it. Amended language will be presented on March 13th. Article 14, revaluation assessment update. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $24,000 for the statistical update of all properties to be deposited in the revaluation assessment update capital reserve fund established in 2001. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion, we move $24,000 on Article 14.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing no interest, then moving on to Article 15. Article 15, court cases, non-cap reserve. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $30,000 to be deposited in the court cases non-capital reserve fund established in 2003. Is there a motion?
I'd like to make the motion to move $30,000 on Article 15.
Do you have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Again, any discussion with regard to Article 15?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Go right ahead.
As chairman of the Budget Committee, I would like to make an amendment to this dollar number. When I spoke with you all earlier about what the Budget Committee had done with the budget, we removed $15,000 out of the legal line. Okay, I need to make the motion first, and then somebody's got to second it. I'd like to make the motion that instead of this line reading $30,000, that it would read $45,000. If I can get a second, I'll explain it.
I'll second that.
You've got a motion, and you've got a second. Go right ahead.
Okay. When I spoke to you earlier, I mentioned that we had removed money from the legal line in the budget. The request was to have a larger than normal legal line for the selectmen's budget. This is a non-capital reserve where if the money is put here, the money can be used for legal, but it cannot be used for any other purpose. If money is put in a budget, it can be moved at the discretion of the selectmen to any position in that budget where it can be expended. The feeling of the Budget Committee was that this particular line and this particular capital reserve, non-capital reserve this year, has been used quite extensively. There is not an amount of money setting in this non-capital reserve at the current moment. The target amount originally was $50,000. There's currently less than $5,000 in the account. So our method of funding as the Budget Committee would be that we ask that you move this motion at $45,000. I know that we took the money out of the operating budget, and this just puts it back in another spot, and some people may feel like we may not have done due diligence, but we feel this puts it in a much more protected spot for the taxpayer in that it can be used for one purpose only. Thank you.
Any other discussion? I'll be asking for a vote on the amended language. And it will be to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $45,000 to be deposited in the court cases non-capital reserve fund established in 2003. I'll ask for all those in favor to please state yes. And all those- Let's try it again. All those in favor, please state yes.
Yes.
And opposed, no. Yes has it. That's the new amended language. I want to take any discussion on the new amended language. Seeing none, I'll call it for a vote. All those in favor of, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $45,000 to be deposited in the court cases non-capital reserve fund established in 2003. Please indicate by stating yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, no. Yes has it. Article 15 with the $45,000 amount will appear on the ballot March 13th. Highway Equipment Capital Reserve, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $60,000 to be deposited in the Highway Equipment Capital Reserve Fund established in 2006. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move the $60,000.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion on Article 16? Yes, no.
Paula Gilman, 50 Hawkins Lane, Lower Gilmanton. What is the amount currently in the fund now?
Currently in the fund at the present time, we have $353,344 and some change.
And you want to raise this amount? I'm sorry, I forgot the amount. Right there.
60,000.
60,000. Why does it have to be 60,000?
For some period of time, some of these accounts were not correctly funded. We currently sit in the town with a CIP program, capital improvement program, that recommends what we should be saving for large ticket purchases. As you all know, the town acquired a new 6-wheel plow truck in the last year or two. That money was already saved. It did not have to be raised by taxation. Right now, according to CIP, we have a loader that's 2 years beyond its replacement point, the articulated loader, with an estimated replacement cost of $250,000. If you remove that from this equation, we need to be funding this at a minimum of $60,000 a year to stay with the CIP. Otherwise, in another 5 years, we're going to have made purchases. There's going to be no money left in the account, and we're going to have equipment due to be replaced. This number was not something pulled from the air. It was something that was planned and calculated by people that put time into this to come to that conclusion that this number is where we need to be.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, without any further comment then, Article 16 will be on your ballot on March 13th as set forth. Article 17, see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be deposited in the Salt and Sand Cover Capital Reserve Fund established in 2006. Is there a motion?
Make the motion, we move $2,500 for Article 17.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any discussion on 17? 17 will remain as set forth, and that will be on your ballot March 13th. Article 18, Fire Radio Capital Reserve. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $5,000 to be deposited in the Fire Radio Capital Reserve Fund established in 2015. Is there a motion on that?
I make the motion, we move $5,000 on Article 18.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion on 18? Seeing no hands, nobody approaching the mic. Article 18 will appear on your ballot March 13th as set forth. Article 19, replace ambulance cap reserve. See if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $40,000 to be deposited in the replace ambulance vehicles capital reserve fund established in 2001. And is there a motion?
I'd like to move $40,000 for Article 19.
I'll second that.
And seconded. Any discussion on 19? Seeing no interest in discussion, I'm moving on to 20. 19 will be on your ballot as set forth. See if the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $50,000 to be deposited in the refurbished and/or replaced fire trucks capital reserve fund established in 1998 and modified in 2003. Is there a motion?
Move $50,000 for Article 20.
I'll second that.
And second. Any discussion on Article 20? Seeing nobody approach the mic, no hands up, I'm going to move to 21. Recycling and transfer facility improvements. To see if the town will vote to raise an appropriate sum of $40,000 to be deposited in the recycling and transfer facility improvements capital reserve fund established in 2008. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to move the 40,000 for Article 21.
Is there a second?
Second it.
And seconded. Any discussion on Article 21?
Yes. Liz Brulette, Heritage Lane. I just had a question for you. How much is currently in this fund, and what are we targeting in 2008? It's 10 years ago. How much money is in the fund, and what are we targeting? $40,000 a year seems like a lot. Do we have a specific need coming up, or something targeted to use those funds with?
We'll get to you in 1 second.
Can you hear me? Just want to make sure I read the right line. So I've got balance right now of about $4,000, $4,088.82 as of December 31st. I'm not positive what the balance is that we're always looking for there, but there were extensive costs taken out of that account this year. And the intention of this article, I believe, the selectman, correct me if I'm wrong, was to replace the funds that were used for specifically the site work that was done for the compactor.
Any other comments, concerns? Article 21.
Yeah, I'd like to explain the Budget Committee's position on this. As most of you will see, we did not recommend this. And I'll just reiterate some numbers here so everybody's got them. This account at the start of the year had 31,000. Oh, just a minute. I had it right in front of me now. I've lost the line. Had $31,697. It had $27,646 expended from it this year, and that brought it with a balance of $4,088.82. Historically, the idea behind capital reserves is that we put a amount of money away yearly for an anticipated project. And the Budget Committee did not feel that replenishing this account to the $40,000 number in 1 year was exactly in the spirit of capital reserves. It was our feeling that if this kind of money was going to be expended at the transfer station, that may have been better decided by a vote of the people or something of that nature, but we did not feel that replenishing that $40,000 in this 1 year was what the Budget Committee could support.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Liz Brulette, Heritage Lane. Brian, was there a specific amount that maybe the Budget Committee thought was more appropriate? I mean, is there something targeted by the transfer station that they need $40,000 a year? Because that's going to be yearly, I'm assuming. Because that amount usually is a target. So is there something targeted in the next year that they're expecting to spend $40,000 on?
This was not intended to be a recurring annual $40,000 placement. This was, as we stated, to replenish the fund because it had been used. I do believe that there are some additional items looked at for this coming year. There was talk about extending the roof for the area along the roadside, and that would also need some paving or some concrete work. There's no firm numbers, nothing's been acted on or really moved forward at this point. And then there's also, I believe, work on roofing over the compactors. But it was more the thought of this one time to replenish funds. That being said, I don't know if the budget committee did have a thought on an amended amount that they might want to make.
Okay, thank you.
The budget committee heard numbers from the head of the transfer station. A number of $20,000 was thrown around. I'm not sure that we're here to make an amendment to this. I don't think that we as a committee came to this meeting today with that intention. We would like to see a more progressive approach to how the money is going to be saved and what it's going to be used for. This is one of the accounts that is it is entitled with the selectmen as agents to expend, and this is not in any way the budget committee asking that the selectmen do differently. It's just our concern to replenish this account to a large number when I think, as you've heard, there's no firm plan. There's no firm, we want to do this and it's going to cost $6,500. We're going to do this and it's going to cost, and the budget committee wants to see those kind of numbers. So that's why we stand where we stand on it.
Anything else? One at a time.
Dan Shallow, 41 Shell Camp Road. I contained myself long enough. I just need to ask a couple of questions that seem to be consistent with these capital reserve funds. I'm assuming that the spending authority of the selectmen, is that correct in all these cases? And if not, I would like to have that brief when we go so that we know who has the authority to spend. Second of all, I'd like to know what, according to the capital improvement plan, what is the target value that is supposed to be in this particular warrant article? Do you have those figures?
How much of this do you want me to divulge into, Heidi, and how much do you want to handle? I do not have exact accounts as to which ones the selectmen are agents to expend from.
Okay, and I understand that, and that's why I'm saying that in the future, and I'm remiss in not attending the budget sessions, I admit that, okay? But I think it's important that we understand what the target is for that. If the capital improvement plan says that they want $40,000 in it, that was the plan, then whether we put it in this year or next year, that certainly should be the target, okay? But I think it's important that we understand who has the authority to expend and what the target is according to the capital improvement plan. I had comments on a couple of others, but I refrained from saying anything, but I want to know. I don't know if anybody else does.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I can tell you as we go through which capital reserve funds the selectmen are agents on or not. I can certainly do that as we go forward. The CIP, the CIP is, the committee was not extraordinarily active this year, so I don't know that I would be the best person to speak. I haven't actually attended the CIP meeting yet. I do have an older copy, but I'm not entirely sure that it is, that it covers all accounts. So I would probably defer to Brian on CIP questions.
Could I borrow your copy
You
of the
absolutely
CIP
could.
as I'm a little prepared and do not have mine with me?
Absolutely.
You'll have to excuse me for not being completely prepared, but I can get you the answer you're looking for.
I have no problem, and I don't mean to cause undue stress, that's not the intent. But we're putting all kinds of money into capital reserves, and if we've got a capital reserve plan, it would be nice to know what the target is of that, to see how far we are within those guidelines. And I agree about the spending. I want to know who has the authority to spend, because if the selectmen decide this, then they can spend it on whatever they want. We don't have any say. So I think those are important questions for both. So I don't mean to put you on the spot. That's not the intent.
All right.
Okay.
We're good.
And I don't know you, sir, but you will have to go a long ways to get me on the spot. Okay. In the CIP, there is no projected projects. That's concerning to the Budget Committee. There is no, if you look at your CIP, there's a projection for when the skid steer is due to be replaced. There's a projection for when the loader or the grader or the plow truck or the fire engine or the ambulance is projected to be replaced. So a target amount in this account is a target amount with no projected project. And the Budget Committee's not comfortable with that, I guess is the best answer I can give you. Give us a CIP with a target that we want to do this project in 2020 and we need this much money, and the Budget Committee can support putting that money away. Right now, the way this reads, we can't support it.
Okay, hold on. There are two parts to the question, from what I understand. The other part was the authority to actually spend the funds, and that, I believe, Mr. Shella has a right to have an answer to that as well. So who has the right?
I'm sorry, I thought Brian had answered that. Yes, the selectmen are agents to expend the funds in this particular account, but not on all of them. This one, yes.
Okay, good. You all set?
Yes, thank you.
Liz Brewer, Heritage Lane. Heidi, what has been historically put into this fund prior to this year, on a yearly basis into the fund?
As Brian said earlier, for a few years now, CIP in general has not been actively funded. So I'm not aware of anything in the recent past where there was a regular amount annually put into this account. I did, after I handed it to Brian, I did see on the CIP that there's no CIP recommendation for this fund. So my guess is that the CIP committee hasn't actually had that conversation at this point, which I think is what Brian was speaking to.
So my next question is to the select board. Do you feel that it's absolutely necessary that $40,000 be put into it this year, as opposed to making small incremental payments as every other fund has done? I mean, if we can cut costs a little, maybe not put as much into that fund.
That's fine. I wanted to have it replaced for what we took out of it. So we can
And you took out
maintain
$31,000?
$31,000.
So why do you recommend to put $40,000 back in?
Replacing it was because he had projects, he does have upcoming projects going on. He wants to, as far as I'm concerned, as far as the transfer station goes, I think he's doing a wonderful job of it. I think it looks fantastic.
And I do not doubt that.
And he
I
wants
know
to
they're
clean up
leaking.
the front of it, he wants to put the roof over there and clean up the whole front, so.
But it's like your college student saying, can I have a bunch of money because I'm going to be spending something this year, I just don't know on what. So,
No, I think they know what they want to do with it, and it's, would they have the prices on that, I think, it's not just throwing money at the
I know, but
college kid.
Hold on. Whoa.
Whoa.
One at a time. I don't mind you guys having a discussion outside, but inside is one at a time, and then we'll have a question, a distinct answer, a question, a distinct answer. Thank you. Go ahead.
so I just, as the budget committee had said, I think it would be more comfortable for all the taxpayers to have some sort of targeted project with a set amount of money and then be supportive of this. I make a motion to cut that amount of...
Hold it. It's a motion to amend.
I make a motion to amend Article 21, recycling transfer facility improvements to $20,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Multiple seconds. Any discussion on the $20,000 figure?
I have a question for 52 High Street. I just want some clarification on the CIP. Is it the department heads who usually bring it to the CIP for the discussion? And if that's the case, I would like to remind everybody that we did have a changeover in management. So the projects to come are still being solidified because of the management change. So 2 parts. CIP generally brought through to the CIP committee through the department heads? Yes? No?
I guess I can speak to that, Heather, in that in the 15 years I've been involved in the process, historically, the CIP has been very much looked after by the department head. They were responsible for giving the CIP committee the information that they needed to formulate the CIP. The whole process has gotten a little discouraged, and we're trying to get it back on track. As chairman of the budget committee, I am a member of the CIP, but I'm not in charge of that. You know what I mean? I'm a member on that committee. So historically, yes, the department head would bring a request forward. CIP would say, you know, what's the cost, over what period of time, formulate a table as to how much money should be being set aside. That is the correct process.
So the department head, when was the last time the CIP met, and can he bring that forward at any time for the CIP, or is it only when you meet?
So I believe that the last time that the CIP committee met was December of 16, get my years mixed up. That's the last date that I received minutes from, so I believe that that was their last meeting. And I do know that we did send out some CIP forms that, the CIP is under the planning board, so the planning board chair is the chair, I believe, on the CIP. So I had worked with the planning board clerk over this past year, and we put together a couple of different forms that were sent out to the department heads to be filled out and returned. I do not recall when in the year that was, so I do not recall who management was at that moment.
And my other question would be, if I've heard that there are projects in the works, if this is voted down or amended to the $20,000, where is that money for those projects, and are they currently moving forward?
I believe that the manager for the transfer station has spoken with the building department, so they are in the beginning stages on discussion on a couple of those items. I don't know that we have firm numbers yet. For instance, nothing's been put out to bid for if it was going to be concrete or paving, and of course that's a decision that would need to be made together with the selectmen, and they have not had that thorough discussion yet. We were getting to this point first. There's no funding in the operating budget for any of these projects. So it would come from this capital reserve fund.
Any other questions, concerns? How about for the first time, Mr. Shelley? Oh, okay, thank you.
I don't really know how to use these things.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
It's my understanding that capital reserve funds are to have money on hand for the unexpected, so that you don't have a sudden breakdown of a fire truck and have to come up with the total cost of that fire truck in a year without any kind of backup or preparation. And I'm a little puzzled by this feeling that you need to have a special project in mind to put money in a capital reserve fund. I think we've all experienced this year breakdowns of the equipment at the transfer station, and they've been rather disconcerting or annoying. And I think that having a capital reserve fund is so they can fix these things when they happen, rather than have to delay them. I feel that replacing the fund makes sense, because as homeowners, I think we all know, it's the unexpected things that happen that really get you. And I think that's what we need that money for.
Thank you. We're speaking about the amendment to $20,000. This is not an elimination of the capital reserve fund. It's a reduction by $20,000, just for clarity.
Don, this is a great idea. Thank you. They have it again, and that was Brenda's sentence, by the way. Thank you, Brenda. So this is a tough one because I want to make it clear that the selectmen, although they're agents to spend from this capital reserve fund, they do not have any authority to spend it on anything but a capital item for the transfer station. So that needs to be understood. Whatever money goes in here can only be spent on a capital item for the transfer station. And so, having said that, it sounds as though the Budget Committee's support for this item is withdrawn because of a lack of a capital improvement plan item or anything that says we plan to do this year. I think I'm going to differ with you a little bit in the Senate because the whole point of the capital improvement program is to project our expenditures as accurately as possible into the future and then to contribute to specific accounts that meet those requirements in a very even way. So instead of raising money this year for $350,000 for a grader, we would contribute to a capital improvement a capital reserve fund for $60,000 for however many years. So it's a light burden to the taxpayer, relatively speaking. And then when we actually buy the loader, you're not hit with that great big, or the grader, you're not hit with a great big tax bill because you bought that and maybe another piece of equipment all in the same year. So it's to even out the bumps. That's the whole point, make taxation level. Sorry, so the question, yes, I'm sorry.
20,000 or 40,000?
20,000 or 40,000. I think we have to put some money in there. I think the selectmen did owe it to the Budget Committee to tell them some amount planned, but to leave it at 5,000 is probably not acceptable because a lot of things break and they tend to fix things themselves up at the transfer station pretty efficiently. Sorry for the harangue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? This is on the number. The theory of capital reserve, I think, has been vetted. And if we can get on the number itself and the rationale for the number.
Dan Shallow, again, in 41 Shell Camp Road. And in theory, I support the $40,000. However, I think the selectmen have a responsibility when they're spending capital reserve funds to look at the total amount of money in the capital reserve fund and to be careful not to draw it down too closely unless it's an emergency situation. And therefore, that's why I support the $20,000 this year. I would feel much more comfortable about approving a $40,000 warrant article if there was specific information that was available about what the plans were in the future.
Thank you. Any further comments? This is on the amendment. I'm going to put it to a vote.
Brian Forth, 1503 Province Road. As a taxpayer, and not as the chairman of the Budget Committee, I would like to see the Board of Selectmen, if they have a project in mind, that they budget for that project. If you're going to spend $15,000 at the transfer station to make improvements, I'm all with that. But if there's no money in the capital reserve to do it this year, instead of putting the money in the capital reserve to take the money out to expend it, we put it in the budget to fix whatever it is wrong, and then we make a CIP that says this is our progression moving forward. That is why you're hearing some resistance from me, and this is my taxpayer explanation to that.
Thank you. I'm going to call this particular petition to a vote. It's on the amended language. To To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be deposited in the Recycling and Transfer Facility Improvements Capital Reserve Fund established in 2008. All those in favor of the 20,000 number, please indicate by stating aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. No. Ayes have it overwhelmingly. New language in Article 21 is 20,000. I'm going to place that before the body as a vote in its entirety now. I will read it in. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $20,000 to be deposited in the Recycling and Transfer Facility Improvements Capital Reserve Fund established in 2008. All those in favor, please state yes. Yes. All those opposed, no. Yes has it. The amended language is carried. Article 22. See if the town will vote to establish a capital reserve fund under provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purpose of academy building mechanical upgrades and professional engineering to raise and appropriate the sum of $110,000 to be placed in this fund and to appoint the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund. Do I have a motion?
Move 110,000 for Article 22 for discussion purpose.
Second?
Second.
And seconded. Any discussion on 22?
Can I just ask what the...
I'm sorry, we got it.
Oh, Liz Brulot, Heritage Lane. What are the mechanical upgrades that need to be done on the academy then?
The fire pump and the generator.
And did we vote on the generator last year?
2 years ago, right? 2 years?
And
16.
was it not replaced?
No, it was not replaced. There is no generator.
So where's the money that we voted on 2 years ago?
It went back into the generator. Well, we encumbered it 1 year and then it ended up putting back into the general fund.
Is there a reason why, after voting yes to fund the generator, it was never purchased?
Because it wasn't enough money. I mean, you could go buy a generator, put it out on a pad and go, ooh, that's nice. It's not going to do anything. It's not big enough. From recommendations from the chief of the fire department, he felt as though that the pump should be on it. He feels as though that this should be operational, the building.
So is there a reason why there's been a 2-year delay in the purchase?
Yeah, because, yeah, we're working on it.
But do we have a price? Have we gone out, figured out what we now need when previously, obviously, whoever made the decision on what we needed was not correct, I'm guessing?
By getting more quotes, they weren't correct. I mean, if you get one generator.
So what's the new?
I'm sorry, one at a time. One.
It's for a generator and a pump.
And then what's the
Fire.
cost of that?
110.
So this is just for that
There
generator?
is still, no, it's for the fire pump too. But there's still weighing out the pros and cons to it as far as to not have a load on the electrical end of it and make the generator smaller. But there's quotes in there that we still have to sit down and figure out. Do we want a diesel fire pump, or do we want it to run off the generator, or do we want it separate? And we're still going back and forth as far as internal wiring, and it's...
So our guesstimate is 110, just for the generator?
Yeah, that's a good number.
Thank you. Further comment?
Brian Forrest, 1503 Province Road. I've got some information on this, so I'm out here as a taxpayer, speaking to the body as a taxpayer. This is kind of a two-part problem. We have an academy building that needs a new fire pump, and it's going to be expensive. The fire pump is borderline non-functional. The whole generator issue is another thing, because we voted to put a generator in and the number wasn't a good number because people didn't do their homework, which is why you're starting to see the budget committee balking up against some of these numbers. If you aren't coming forward with a good number, we don't really want to hear it. We want to hear a good number that we can come to you, we can support as elected officials to the body, that this is a good number. As a taxpayer, I'm standing up here now going, there's a need, but in all due respect, there's no solid number yet. So we need to make sure that we're coming forward with these articles with a solid number. Budget committee, as a committee, saw that there's a need. The vote was to support this article. As a taxpayer, I need to see better numbers coming forward for me to support. We supported a generator 2 years ago. We don't have one yet. The money has now been raised in tax and put back in the general fund. I want to see solid numbers. As a taxpayer, I need to see these numbers. I cannot continue to just say, yup, we need to do it, and let's do it. I need to see solid numbers, move it forward, get it done. Therefore, as a taxpayer, I stand out here saying I don't support this article.
Other comments?
Nick Wilson, Route 140, Wilmington Iron Works. Is it a standard practice that we put these out for RFP and get bids on before we go to a budget committee and have a line item of 110,000, or do we just kind of say roughly we think this is what it's going to cost and shoot at the hip? Because he said last time the generator wasn't enough money.
There is bids on it. It's been bid out 3 or 4 times. It's the different options going every this way, whether it's a diesel pump or whether it's the electric pump, and how much does the transfer box cost. It's more money this end, and it has to be laid out. I don't want to rush it.
Is there a set standard though? I mean, do we have some companies did this already that now we're going up to bid with it, or we just
Sorry, everything has pretty much gone out to bid. In fact, I'm going to reach out and do some more on it. I'm not going to. We need to sit down as a board and have 10 minutes to sit down and figure all this stuff out. I'm not going to just jump into it and put something in that's inadequate.
I personally feel like that's kind of happening. We're asking $110,000. You're not saying we have 3 bids. The highest one was $70,000. The lowest one is $40,000. This is the way we want to go with the middle one. And we're putting this on like Food Book, Food Bean, Contractor Page, the White Pages, any of those RFI sites.
The unfortunate part is what complicates it is different companies have to bid the different things. So we're dealing with generator people, we're dealing with fire pump people, and we're dealing with the town electrician. So this is trying to coordinate it all into that. Like I said, I'm not going to jump into it, but this is something that needs to be done.
I agree with that. It needs to be done, but I'm asking, are we getting an engineering firm or someone to say, hey, you need X pump with X generator or electricity capacity to do this, and then putting that out to bid so we have real numbers to work with?
We're getting real numbers from, major companies that, it's not just winging it. We got real numbers from large companies that do their own, engineering. You don't think we need to hire a project engineer to do this when these people that are selling this stuff and installing it are quite qualified to handle it.
I've been in construction trade since I was 16, and typically you get a RFI or a bid, solicited bid, and it's got all the specifications of what you're bidding, so everybody's bid is the same, and it's uniform across the board. Then you can say, they're all bidding the same pump, this is the cost to do it. That's typically what I've seen in the past.
It's the pumps, you have a choice of pumps. You have a choice of pumps, so if you're going to, there's a 300 gallon a minute, there's a 500 gallon a minute, there's a 1,000 gallon.
Well, that's my point. Do we have something that we're getting ready to bid the same?
You gotta pull the whole, one at a time, okay? Nobody can understand when we got 2 people talking. You want something?
If I could just speak real quick, the design of this article was to allow for hiring of an engineering firm if needed, so that could be done depending on how things progress. Because as you said, there are several different vendors involved. There are different needs to be looked at, and we want to make sure that the warrant article did provide for that, for hiring an engineering firm. Should the board choose to, and because of the consideration that we may need an engineering firm, we did need to put forward a warrant article so that we would have funding available to hire them.
Next.
Dan Shallow, again. I'd like to thank Mike for his comments. I think they're right on. I guess my questions are more directed to the select board, that if the town passed a warrant article authorizing a generator 2 years ago or 3 years ago, there should have been planning in place at that time to buy something with the specifications for it with a bid process. And I know from sitting in you folks' position that it's easy to say write a specification out. Well, I'm not an electrician, I don't know how to write a specification out. And sometimes it's a matter of comparing apples with oranges, and it's difficult to do, I understand that. But my question specifically is, do you actually intend on spending any of the money this year for this $110,000? And if you do, what is the intent on spending it? What are you going to spend it for?
Please correct me if I'm misspeaking here. My understanding would be that should an engineering firm need to be hired, we would have the funding available to do that this year. And the primary goal at this point is the fire pump. Because at this point we've been told that if it is to break again, the company that services it will not be able to. So we wanted to make sure that there was sufficient funding for a replacement fire pump. And there are a couple of different options, as the select board mentioned, deciding if they wanted to go with a diesel or an electric. And then the next level of discussion would be, if they did go with the electric fire pump, do they then get a generator that's included on or not? And of course, if they go with the electric and they don't put it on a generator, then if we have a power outage, the sprinkler system won't work. So, but the primary purposes were the fire pump, so that should it need to be replaced in an emergency, we are able to do so, and if an engineering firm is required, that we have funding in place for that.
Thank you, Heidi. That clears up that question, but I am just wondering if it's a fire pump and an engineering firm, and according to the selectmen, they've done research on this, they've gone out for bids and proposals. What is the range of fire pumps that we're talking about? Are we talking about from 20 to 50,000, 70 to 100,000, or give us some ballpark figure of what you're looking at?
From electric ones are from like 29.5 to 36 or 37, and then the diesel one was what, 92 or something? 92 grand?
93. And I would just clarify that there, as Steve had mentioned earlier, these quotes do not, they're not full service. There's also electrical work that would have to be done. So
yeah, it just includes the purchase of the equipment, correct? Not anything to connect it up or the internal wiring within the building and stuff like that.
No wiring.
Okay.
All right. The 29.5 to 35 or whatever it was, it just installed it without wiring.
All right, so if I understand correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the primary purpose is the $110,000 this year is to look at doing the engineering study to say what everything needs to be done and purchasing one piece of equipment, but not hooking that equipment up to the facility. Probably not. You can't do it for the 110.
Speak up.
That's purchasing them all.
That's purchase and install.
Yes.
So at the end of the year, this should be done. Is that what you're saying?
Why not?
Okay, I guess that's all.
Fire pump at the very least, and if it isn't, yeah, generator, why not? I mean, if the money is there, then we can do it. But
well,
we still...
The money was there before.
And it wasn't enough money,
okay.
What we said before.
Okay.
So,
all right, well, good. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deb Cornett, I've been trying to follow and understand this too, but so the engineering firm is going to be a separate, it sounds like we've got 4 different entities on this. So your engineering firm, and what was the ballpark that we're looking at?
There's really an engineering firm, yeah.
That you're going to consult, but you don't know how much?
No, we don't know how much that is because we don't feel, I don't personally feel, that we talk about it some more between the board and find out whether, I mean, these people, they do this every day. they design them, they install them. It just,
Okay, but then there's the engineering, then there's the pump,
Yes.
people that do the fire sprinkler systems.
yes,
Then there's the generator,
yes,
and then there's electrical.
yes,
So there's 4 different entities, so there's 4 different RFPs that have to go out.
right?
And how are you, I'm not seeing how that's gonna be done in 1 year. It just seems like an awful lot
Okay.
for not having those yet. I don't know, I'm trying to follow.
No, thank you. We will do our best.
I
I mean,
know.
it's not like we took the $18,000 from the generator and did something else. We encumbered it once and then we let it be
Yeah,
consumed
but it
back
sounds
to the
like
public.
this, from that, is gonna be much bigger than what was anticipated to begin with because of the sprinkler
Yeah,
system having run, which
because of the
makes
fire,
sense.
for the fire pumps.
But I don't, with Brian, I understand Brian's concern too, with there seeming like you don't have enough information to really come up with a final figure, to say that it's gonna be done this year. That's all. I'm just trying to follow. So I think
It's just the basic numbers from the beginning on the 18,000 was not big enough to run the fire pump and do any other things you wanted to have done.
If I could just clarify, the language was written to allow for an engineering firm if needed. And the number that we put forward was to allow for engineering if needed and to ensure that we had funding available for the fire pump specifically. The intention when we brought this forward to the board was not to necessarily ensure that the entire project was done within a year, but rather that we started the funding mechanism and had the funding available, because as I said, the fire pump, they told us they will not be able to repair it again. So we need to be prepared for that situation.
I just want to see it done once and done right. But I just want to make sure that.
Right, we were just trying to properly label the fund so that it could be used for all of these items. I certainly did not put forward to the board a specific number that I anticipated would cover all items, but more to get the ball rolling and be prepared to deal with a possible emergency fire pump.
Okay, so more than likely it wouldn't be completed in the next year. Totally.
It's a possibility. But the reason that we are waiting is so we can do it right one day.
Thank you.
Okay.
Messed up.
Amy Brown, Soy Lake. So, not knowing the full process, can the public view the bids?
Yes.
Okay. Would we have to request those?
Yes.
Okay.
You can do that by email, just so you know.
Just email, okay.